You know, red dots on pistols have become the standard now. Everything from your high-end competition guns to your low-end concealed carry guns, almost every manufacturer is now shipping a version of their pistols that is optics ready. But one of the biggest drawbacks of red dots, and there's a lot of pros to this by the way, but one of the biggest drawbacks is the fact that they can be pretty expensive. So that's why I do like to show good budget options when I can. This one is the Sightmark Mini Shot M-Spec, which they sent to me, so I appreciate that. But I'm going to tell you the truth about this optic, whether I think it's worth it, and also what kind of pistols this would be good on, what kind of pistols it would not be so good on. So we'll talk about that as well. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. Let's go and get into it. Now, before I cover the features, if you haven't Googled this already, what do you think the price of this thing is? I'll cover the features, I'll tell you the price, so just leave that down below. I like to see what people think these things cost, and then when I tell you the actual cost, you might be like, oh wow, that's more or less than what I thought it would be, or maybe even right on par. So 6061 T6 aluminum. We also have this steel housing that covers the optic as well, just in case we drop it or anything like that. And then it also has a rubber mount that goes over the top of it for storage purposes. I never use those things, but it does come with it. Also comes with a low pro riser and an AR riser. We have 10 brightness levels, so some really, really low light levels. They do not claim night vision on this one, but really low light all the way up to your brightest setting. We have a top loading 2032 battery. They claim anywhere from 300 to 30,000 hours. I would not expect 30,000 hours out of this thing, but 2032s are pretty freaking awesome. And what makes this even better is the fact that it's top loading. Any manufacturer that is still making bottom loaded battery options for their optics, they suck. And they got to get away from them. So, it's just awful, man, having to take these things off and just to change a battery. Even though they last a long time, it's still annoying. So, scratch resistant lens, waterproof up to 3.3 feet, shockproof, and dustproof. So, unless you're doing underwater Navy SEAL drills and you go beyond 3 feet, you should be pretty good. Most companies claim water resistance, not waterproof. So, that's a pretty bold claim right there, and I have no reason to think that it's not waterproof up to 3 feet. I didn't test it. I didn't think it was necessary. Most people won't be putting their optics in water, but hey, it's cheap enough where I could do that. I guess if y'all wanted to see it, I could do it in a short or something. So we have nice audible and tactile buttons, one on each side for our brightness settings, and we can press and hold on the right side, and that's going to shut the optic all the way off. It also has a 12-hour automatic shutoff time. So after all that said, what do you think the actual cost of this thing is? Yeah, I found them from like $169 to $199, depending on where you shop. And I think overall that's a really good price. Now, one thing about Sightmark, these are made in China, they're designed in Texas, but they have a lifetime warranty on them. From what I've seen, and I've never had to use their warranty, so just take this for what it's worth, but from what I've seen, they do a really good job at responding to people and taking care of any kind of warranty issues. So there you go. Now, what about using the optic itself? I have my Canik SFX Rival for a very specific reason, is why I use this particular pistol with this particular sight, which I'll talk about here in a minute. But overall, the sight did everything I needed it to do and nothing more. You know, obviously one major feature that I really love on a lot of the newer red dots is shake awake or motion activated. Every manufacturer calls it something different, but that would be nice. But for something like this, I don't really see this as a defensive option, and there's one reason for that. There's no cutout back here for an iron sight to co-witness. Now, specifically on this Canik, they send you a variety of different plates for different footprints of optics. So with the plate I had to use on this gun specifically, I had to remove the rear sight. Another thing with this one, it's got a pretty decent design. It's not too big. The window is decent as far as the sizing. It's not enclosed, so you're going to get quite a bit of dust and stuff in there. You'll have to, kind of clean that out. But because of this design in the rear, it's not going to easily co-witness unless you have suppressor height sights, and even then, you might still get a little bit of issue because of just how tall this sits up here in the rear. Now, they do make an A-Spec, which is a little bit different design, but very similar to their M-Spec, which actually does have a cutout so you can co-witness with your iron sights. Now, again, for this gun, which I would use for competition shooting, and stuff like that. And I mean, even home defense, but I don't use this one for home defense. I think it's okay. I'm fine with that. But for a defensive gun, for a concealed carry gun especially, or any defensive handgun that you're going to be using, you definitely want to be able to co-witness and have the ability to use those irons in case your dot goes out. Again, a lot of these dots use 2032s, very awesome battery, lasts a long time, but you know, if your luck is anything like mine, it would die as soon as I really needed it, and if I don't have a way to co-witness, I don't feel great about that. Overall, the accuracy of the dot, I really didn't have to change a whole lot with this thing. I pretty much just made a couple of adjustments and it was right on. Positive engagement. I didn't find that it like lost its zero or anything crazy like that. Of course, I wasn't swapping optics and all that kind of stuff. The other thing I noticed is on its highest setting, there's a really kind of crazy bursting effect. It almost has like this 100 MOA red circle that's just not crystal clear, that kind of just illuminates the entire glass when I turn it up all the way, and then it's bouncing off the optic and stuff, and I really don't like it. But I do have astigmatism, and so that does affect how I see some of these dots. I almost always get a little bit of bursting. There's very few optics where I don't get any kind of bursting effect. But normally if I turn it down, like this one, I have about halfway and I have no bursting, or very little. Yeah, no bursting there. Keep it out like right there. Turn it up just a notch, then I start to get some bursting, and the higher I go. So about level 5 or 6 is where I really start to see that bursting effect, and that big wide red circle kind of engulfs the optic itself. So that's why I just keep this thing turned down, so that way when I go to turn it back on, you know, it works out well for me. All in all, I think this is a pretty decent option for the cost. And like I said, from what I've seen from Sightmark, they do a pretty good job. Now again, I wouldn't throw this on any defensive handgun, just simply because it does not have that cutout in the rear so you can co-witness. I would go with one of their other series like the M-Spec or something like that. And this is the second Sightmark that I've done. And actually the first one we did, I actually gave that away to a patron. So, you know, I wanted to give it away because I thought it was a pretty decent option. So there you go, man. The Sightmark Mini Shot M-Spec is definitely a solid budget option, or at least it has been so far. I've had this thing for a few months now. I've taken it on several range trips, and so far I really like this thing. Let me know what budget optics you like the best. Maybe you have Sightmark or experience with Sightmark. I'd love to hear those things down below. Big thanks to you guys. See you in the next one, and as always, hold them down.